Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McKusick, and it's time for Friday Morning GM with my co-host, Vas Laricos. Vas, how you doing?
Pleasure to join you as always, Ken, as we navigate through this offseason. And notably, with the Super Bowl concluded, the Ravens are currently the betting favorite to win the AFC in the 2026 season at plus 550.
Incredible. Actually, I got asked on air yesterday if I, who I thought were among the best two teams in the AFC. And I did begrudgingly say the Ravens, but this team is going to undergo a ton of change in 2026. The nice thing that they do have, though, is the advantage that Buffalo and Kansas City had for many years, which is they're playing in a weak division this year. So I think
Exactly.
that will be that'll be a fairly substantial edge.
The whole conference looks a little bit down with Mahomes coming off injury, and Buffalo has a lot of free agents. Going to see how Eric DeCosta puts it together. But going into this phase, it seems like the Ravens have a force multiplier on both sides of the ball: Lamar Jackson on offense and Jesse Minter on defense.
There you go, or Kyle Hamilton even.
And Kyle Hamilton.
but the other thing I forgot what I was about to say with regard to this. I'm optimistic, and the Ravens did finally announce their coaching hires are done today. And it's a very, very long list, including some names that I hadn't seen prior to today on this list. So, worth going down the list to discuss each one as we do. But the most important name by far is a name we've been wondering if he was the candidate for a while, is Anthony Levine as a special teams coordinator.
Absolutely. He was a great player, has taken the coaching very well, brings a lot of fire to the coaching staff. I think it was a great hire. Maybe they had come to an agreement previously and not quite announced it. It was probably would be my guess there. I do think it's very positive that the Ravens, with some of their coordinators that don't have a ton of experience, have paired them up with assistants that do have a lot in their departments.
Let's put a pin in that for a second. I do want to come back to that because I think that's an enormous move for the Ravens to make sure that there's a hand on the shoulder of some of these younger guys who they're clearly betting on for dynasty, because Anthony Levine is 38. But you and I have had an ongoing issue on Friday Morning GM with game day roster construction that has been, there have been too many special teams only specialists. And oftentimes it's not even really that they're a special teams specialist. It's that they're a guy they don't want to cut and they have him at the end of the roster and he can give you a little bit on special teams. Maybe I'm looking at David Ajabo with this criticism, by the way. It really wasn't the guy who was contributing there. But a more significant player who I think is going to fit into Anthony Levine's wheelhouse of figuring out how to coach him up as both a defender and as a special teams player is Keandre Jackson. Keandre Jackson had a fantastic year on special teams this last year. It will not be enough to secure his future in the NFL for, say, an 8-year career. But there's not too much. The line he has to grow, the amount he has to grow from where he is right now is not too much. He just has to be an effective backup half-field safety. That's really all he needs to do. I'm not saying it's the easiest thing to do, but if Levine can get him focused on doing that, and a special teams coordinator, he'll always be a significant influence on Keandre Jackson's life, because Keandre Jackson, most of his snaps are going to come on special teams probably during his career. But he'll also have this other thing that he needs to be good at, and Levine himself had experience in having a very important defensive role in addition to his co-cap role on special teams.
Oh, certainly. And he even started a game at cornerback one time when they were really in a pinch way back when, Levine.
Played on the outside, played at slot, he played deep safety, he did it all.
Yep. Yeah, they have a legacy there, tradition of having some of those jack of all trades type of players, and it'd be tremendous if Jackson can develop into one of them. Usually when someone is such a standout on special teams, that will translate to defense.
Yeah. And the team will want it to translate. That is important. Sometimes you have a player like Andrew Bethel, or still a guy at the end of his career who's you're only getting a special teams value for the time he's out there. You don't want him out there really on the field defensively. But the Ravens, mostly it's been the guys who've stayed around for a long time, like McClellan and McLean and others. They did it because they had an important role on defense or even on offense at times as well.
Certainly.
Love him as a hire too. At the Ravens way on special teams, I think should be considered. Let's get back to the other thing you mentioned though, is that they hired an assistant special teams coordinator with a hell of a lot more experience, 18 years of coaching special teams in the NFL, including 4 separate runs as defensive coordinator.
Yes, a special team coordinator for different teams. So that is, and I'm not quite positive the pronunciation. Ben Kowicka. Do you know how to pronounce that, Ken?
I would have said Kotwicka, but I'm just going phonetically.
Kotwicka. So now they have the experience of Kotwicka, the experience of Randy Brown as the kicking specialist under Anthony Levine, and it's just going to be helpful. And I think the same thought applies to Declan Doyle, who's probably maybe one of the riskiest hires. I would say he doesn't have a whole lot of experience. He's 29 years old or 30 years old, but I think the Jesse Minter and Eric DaCosta have surrounded him with a support system that should be very helpful. You're muted, Ken.
By the way, it's Kotwicka. The Ravens announced their pronunciations of these, so I actually have those for when we need them during this. Completely agree. Also with the comment on Lombardi. If there was anything I was a little bit concerned about, is that Lombardi and Doyle come from the same tree, and that they're going to have too much similarity in terms of their thought process and whatnot, as opposed to, layering in a couple of different ways of thinking about how to organize the passing game. Now, I don't want it to become a fight. They're fighting over game planning, but on the other hand, I want, something that is not a Drew Brees style passing attack for Lamar Jackson, because I don't think that will work.
I think that's where the hiring of Marcus Brady comes in as the pass game coordinator, who was with the Chargers. So he was a Jesse Minter connection. And then you also have Ledford, who's the run game coordinator from the Falcons. So you have a new play caller with a guy who has experience calling the pass game, another guy who has experience calling the run game, and then Lombardi is sort of the sage, very experienced veteran.
Yeah.
I think it's a really good setup.
Yeah, you're right. And Marcus Brady is a good one. He was previously offensive coordinator with the Colts for 2 years too. So I don't know if he might have been reporting to Frank Reich or somebody at the time where he wasn't actually calling plays, but he was the OC anyway there. Who else do we have to talk about? The wide receiver coach they hired yesterday is Kerry Colbert. A interesting hire, certainly. Spent a lot of time at USC. And he has a litany of outstanding receivers that he both recruited and coached there, and then at Florida as well. The big one at Florida was Ricky Pearsall. Also, Taj Washington, who's in the NFL now, came from Florida, I believe. But he had 3 of them: Drake London, Michael Pittman, and a third one that I'm forgetting.
St. Brown?
Yeah, Amon-Ra St. Brown. How you forget him? A 4th round pick, who ended up being extremely NFL ready, and that's what I love about this group, is that there were a bunch of receivers. Not everyone had prototypical traits. Now Drake London did, but the others really did not as a group. And Pearsall was a little bit of a gamble in the first round, certainly, and he had 10.0 yards per target this last year.
Yeah, Colbert, I'm excited about this hire as well. He's a younger coach. He's a Black coach, so he should be able to connect with the players pretty well. I saw a clip of him where he had individual handshake with each of the receivers they each had their own little, routine of handshakes, like some of the baseball players do after they hit a home run type of deal. And then he was with Denver, if I recall. So he has coached with Doyle, and he, I believe, also coached with Minter at the collegiate level years ago. So he does have some strong ties to the staff.
Yeah. The assistant wide receiver coach is Prentice Gill. Tell us what you know about him.
So he's returning to the staff, one of only 4 members to return. And I don't know a ton about him, but I know he received positive feedback from the players that he coached last year, and hopefully has a good rapport with Tez Walker.
He was a coaching fellow last year for the Ravens, and I don't know what that means about staying there for the whole season. He's actually been the last 2 years, and at 2024, he was actually coaching, I believe, IMG, so that's high school ball locally. And he was 4 seasons as a co-wide receivers coach at Arizona State. So an interesting mix of things. I'm sure they know what they have from these last 2 years. Somebody really liked him and stood up for him. I wonder who that was. Who said you got to get this guy? But the fact that that had to happen that way, I like.
Yeah, and it's going to retain some guys from last year too. You don't want a whole new, fresh set, especially but an up and coming coach. I mean, really, that's what the staff is. They have the veterans where they need them, and the rest of the staff should be some hungry young guys.
All right. Move on to the tight ends coach, and that was, as far as I know, was announced today. Might have been one day previously, but Zach Grossi. It's spelled like Tony Grossi, but it's pronounced Grossi in his case.
Got it.
Frankenstein kind of thing. But you remember that from Young Frankenstein? Did you see that movie?
Caribbean, yeah. There's a couple of them.
All right. It was a big deal in the movie, or at least we thought it was. Anyway, he was a previous pass game specialist and an offensive quality control coach. Do you know anything about him otherwise?
Not Denver, too much. He was with Denver, so they're going back to the Sean Payton tree. So he also did work with Doyle, it appears. I would just make the note that looking up forward to the draft, Dane Brugler said that the day 3 is loaded with tight ends.
Right.
It should be a really strong crop of day 3 tight ends, and a veteran NFL veteran coach can hopefully help develop one into the Ravens tight end 3.
All right. The pass game coordinator, Marcus Brady. We talked about him briefly earlier, previously the offensive coordinator with the Colts. So I don't know his age, but he's not that old. I
want to say 40s.
Okay. He does kind of look, he's 46. Okay. So he's one of the older coaches on the staff there doing that. But, a fair amount of experience as well goes with that. I've got to dive into these guys more for an individual pod on some of these, but the list is out today, so we thought we'd go through it here.
Yeah, I thought it was good to get a pass game coordinator when you're looking at the staff. You're seeing a lot of coaches that are, they excel in the run game, and you want to balance that out with pass game. He doesn't have a sterling reputation necessarily, but hopefully, Minter saw some things he liked with the John Harbaugh, Greg Roman offense last year and from the Chargers, and he wants to bring that to Baltimore.
Yeah. All right. Defensive quality control coach is Andrew Rogan. Now, I do like the fact that this guy has a personnel and analytics background as in addition to coaching. That's by the way, quite unusual. Those silos are separate, moving between the silos. I'm not saying it never happens, but it doesn't happen as often as you think. And actually, the barrier is between personnel and analytics and coaching. Analytics and coaching are the same silo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I don't have much to add on the quality control coaches, but certainly they're important pieces. I think it's a 27-man staff in total, or 27 total. I think there's one woman on the staff, but it's certainly they serve a vital role, and it just seems like the pieces of the puzzle fit together pretty nicely across the board.
Yeah, he brought Christina DeRuyter with him from the Chargers, to be chief of staff to the head coach. Now, I don't know exactly what that means, but my guess is it's a highly organizational position where she organizes meetings, make sure the schedule's set properly and whatnot. I don't like calling such positions secretaries, but maybe it's more like an office manager for the coaches to think of it that way. That's my guess.
There's a lot of administration that goes into being a head coach, and for a first-time head coach, you want to have the support system. A couple other points I'd like to make on the coaching staff before we move on. Rick Minter was also added. His father, as I think he said, a football act or something or other. He brings a wealth of experience to the. So now Minter has his best friend in Volker, his father on the staff. I thought it was a little bit interesting on the offensive side of the staff with a novice coordinator. They had some more NFL experienced NFL veterans. On the defensive side, when you have Minter and you have Weaver, who's a superstar defensive coordinator, even without being a play caller, you have a little bit more leeway to dip into up and coming coaches, which include both the defensive line coach Esposito and the outside backers coach
Harlan Bauer.
Yes, who I believe they hired since we last recorded, who just seemed to be like upside type of additions to the staff.
Yeah, he's not super young. I think he's in his late 30s or whatever, but he's not. I mean, he's not old. He's certainly by NFL standards either. And I would agree with you. I thought they did across the board. They did a nice mix of ages. Mike Mickens was one of the early names mentioned, and that's an enormous upside guy.
Yeah.
So if you're looking through who are yeah, maybe we do that. Pick out the three guys from the staff who you think might be head coaches at some point later. I might have four on this staff. It is right now.
Let me pull up the full list.
Yeah,
I'd certainly say Weaver. I think
yep,
that's a
Weaver.
given. I'd probably say Doyle.
It got to be Doyle because he's age only.
Yep, and then Mickens is a good choice, as well as I'd say probably Mickens. Those would be my top three.
Yeah, those three are my top three as exactly as well. I think Volker is more likely to hang with Minter for a long period of time here in Baltimore in some role, and he's the safeties coach, but that's a new designation that I hadn't seen for him before.
Yeah, I had a question on that actually, Ken, because there is no coach listed as a cornerback coach specifically.
Right.
They have assistant DB coach in Taylor. They have secondary coach in Mickens, and Volker's safety. Now I assume that Mickens would take on that role primarily, but I do think that there's some technique at cornerback that Rod Woodson actually brought to light from Radio Row at the Super Bowl, where he was mentioning that Marlon Humphrey was they went back to an old technique, low hip instead of outside shoulder, which Rod Woodson, obviously Hall of Fame cornerback safety, said that it's more difficult to defend a deep ball when you are playing that technique.
Mm-hmm. All right, that's it's interesting. That terminology is new to me, but it's something that it's if it's outside shoulder and low hip, I can guess what it probably means. It means that low hip, you're probably defending the inside of the field more, and outside shoulder, you're probably making sure that you take the sideline away. It seems a little unusual that you do that, but it is. I'm sure Rod knows what he's talking about there.
I thought it was interesting from Rod, and maybe it gives a little bit of credence that Marlon Humphrey can rebound a little bit from the cornerback position next season.
Let's talk a little bit about Marlon Humphrey, obviously in the news right now because he was at the Chargers Super Bowl thing. It's not a great look.
I couldn't care less. Have we actually seen a picture of Marlon? Because I saw a couple posts and it's vague people from 20 yards away with their back turned. I hadn't actually seen Marlon in a Seahawks jersey or anything like that.
And I didn't see that, but I it's been reported by multiple people at this point. I don't want to perpetuate a rumor if it's not true. On the other hand, it's highly inappropriate is maybe not the right word. A congratulatory text or phone call is plenty. You don't have to go there and congratulate Mike McDonald in person. And you certainly don't want to do that if there's any consideration of tampering being involved, that you're basically auditioning for your next contract. He's under contract with the Ravens. And, to me, Rod Woodson needs to sit down with Humphrey directly. I don't know if Humphrey would really want Rod Woodson to come down and sit at the table with him. There's no reason, I don't think, why he wouldn't benefit from the advice, but some people, they just don't want it from an older guy. You've certainly had that at work, I'm sure, at some point during your career. You have advice you just don't want from an older guy who you don't really respect. He can't not respect Rod Woodson, though, at least as a player.
Of course.
And he could be a little pissed off if he mentions technique differences and he doesn't think it's exactly accurate or whatever. That could be true. But Rod Woodson made this exact transition that Humphrey seems poised to make. He's the perfect guy to talk about it with.
I agree with that. There's no question. Woodson is obviously a Hall of Famer for a reason. He's been in the news a lot. I saw another clip of him earlier today that we don't need to get into and look backwards to the coaching change. But he had some interesting thoughts on some rumors of what actually really happened, transpired behind closed doors. Humphrey, my take, Ken, is I'm more concerned about what they do between the lines. And Humphrey always puts maximum effort between the lines. He plays through injury. He's been a tough player, and he's very competitive and very focused on achieving team goals. Off the field, he does some weird stuff. He has a little bit of an eccentric personality. He does some things that rub people the wrong way. For me personally, it doesn't bother me too much, but I do understand why that would upset some people. Still muted.
I'm less bothered by Humphreys off-field behavior than I am by, say, Ocho Cinco's off-field behavior. I mean, some of the name change and whatnot. I'm the podcast thing. I'm not bothered by, not really. First of all, the podcast itself is more entertainment than really
Right.
football analysis. So he's not giving away secrets, which is that's the way it needs to be, by the way, for a player. You can't be an offensive lineman and start talking about offensive line technique and I saw his game. I didn't really like the way he played. You
Right.
certainly can't do that.
Right. Sure.
So anyway,
So, couple more thoughts on the coaching staff. We want to pivot back and we'll wrap the first half here. Are you surprised that Dr. Rush was not retained and there is no one designated as a pass rush coordinator?
I am. I'm surprised to not see his name on the list, and I'm surprised that they didn't bring in a new guy. Now they still can. This does not have to be the final, absolute final list. In
Right,
fact, there could be
exactly.
changes. Somebody. It's probably not a 50% chance or anything, but there may be somebody on this list who doesn't even make it to camp for
Yeah.
whatever reason. So we've got you got 26, 27 guys here. You just something could befall one of them, or they could get a different job at a higher level offered to them, which is the really likely event, and they'd be freed to take that.
Yeah, a lot of staffs are not complete. I think Minter might be the first of the new hires to complete his staff. I don't know that for a fact, but just kind of monitoring. So I think we kind of know. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ken.
No, that's an important point because Minter, basically, the Ravens and Minter have leveraged the fact that this is the most exciting opportunity of all the teams, and they've gotten, I think, outstanding people. I won't say at every single position because there'll be some of these will not work out, but they got a lot of youth and talent. And it started from the very first hire with Mickens after Minter, that it was exciting, and then it continued on with Ledford, who I hope is not a head coaching candidate because I want him in the same role for the next 25 years.
Likewise, yes, completely.
Yeah.
So I think we know what we're going to get schematically from Minter, at least for the most part. We're going to get Hamilton playing in the Derwin James kind of role. We're going to maybe get more zone, although his father did an interview this week that said they caught a lot of zone with the Chargers because he had zone corners, and now that he has man cover corners, he's excited about that. We're probably going to get some lighter fronts and more of a prioritization on stopping the pass based off of what he did with the Chargers. But on the offensive side, there's still some unknowns, and they could help shape the personnel decisions of the offseason. I mentioned last week that in Chicago, they had 20% more 11 personnel than the Ravens did, and they did not use a fullback in Chicago. I do think that they're going to be more under center. But to me, the big question now is how run heavy are they going to be? And I have a couple stats here. Ravens were the run heaviest team in the league last year at 52%. By comparison, Chicago was 11th at 45. The Chargers were 21st at 42, and Denver was 24th at 41. So if they are going to be more of a spread team with more 10% more passing, hypothetically, or 8% more, then maybe receiver becomes more of a priority and fullback comes less.
If these guys are worth their salt, okay, and I really believe all of them, Ledford, probably Lombardi, and I hope Doyle, are all worth their salt. They'll adapt to the personnel and they'll say, hey, look, Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson is the most the mesh point between them is the most powerful weapon in the entire NFL. We've got to leverage that to the greatest degree possible. I think that means you bring Ricard back. And that will be one of the really big questions. We're going to get into UFAs in the second half of the show, by the way. But I think that really is at the centerpiece of this. But I do believe Ricard is such an asset as an inline blocking tight end that you would keep him under either circumstance. So I think it's more likely more likely than not they'll keep him. And as far as the coaching goes, just to the degree they have to discard a number of the things they did previously, that's entirely appropriate coming to this vastly different personnel landscape when it's the difference between having Herbert and Lamar Jackson at quarterback. I mean, that's an enormous difference. Not necessarily in the level of quality or EPA per play, but just in stylistically what those two players bring to the table is very different.
Absolutely. No question about that. I do expect the Ravens to be slightly less run heavy, though, under this new regime. They are 64% of the last 3 years, which is number one far and away. I mean, they're an outlier in that regard. Number two, Was
64%
Washington
what, 12 or 64% of what?
64% run percentage,
No,
run
that
plays
can't be right. Over 3 years?
over the last 3 on average. This was according to, I believe, Sumner Smarts. I looked it up earlier. Number two was Washington at 54, which would make sense because Washington has Jaden Daniels, who's more similar player to.
But you said they were 52% last year. I mean, that does not compute for me. I'll look it up and I'll see what.
Okay.
Okay. Anyway, I think they will retain a very run heavy thing, but will they be less than 64%? Yes, absolutely, because they weren't 64% over the last 3 years. So anyway, so it would have been like 23 that had been massively. So they had 541 attempts in 23, and they threw the ball 494 times, but that it doesn't include the sacks. So you can see it's a slight prevalence to rushing there, maybe like 54% in 23. In 24, they had 554 attempts and 477 passes. Again, that's going to be pretty similar, like 550 to 500, be like an 11 to 10 ratio. That's about 52.4%. So that's about right. They've been fairly stable in that category.
I went through my history. It's from teamrankings.com, and they do have 64.20%. It must be they must have computed it wrong. So I agree. If you did the math, I probably should have just done the math instead of taking it off this show. It came up with 53.55% in 24. So obviously 52 and 53, they would have had to have been up by 70-some percent to get an average. Yeah.
So there you go.
I apologize for that mistake.
No problem. The 53.55 sounds good. And that is a problem, by the way, folks. When you're looking at any site.
Let me tell you about the online cannabis company that's changing the game, Mood.com. They created an entirely line of functional gummies, 100% federally legal THC blends, discreetly delivered right to your doorstep. And here's the best part. You can get 20% off your first order at Mood.com with the promo code Ravens. Now, I've tried a bunch of their gummies myself. Each one's totally unique. The Sleepy Time gummies knock me out right away. They help me unwind fast, leave me refreshed the next morning. The Epic Euphoria gummies, they're perfect for when your day just isn't going the way you want it to go. What makes Mood special is how they pair the THC with natural herbs and adaptogens. You won't find blends like this at any local shop. They've got gummies designed for focus, relaxation, clarity, even energy, all made from cannabis grown on small, family-owned American farms. No pesticides, no shortcuts, just high-quality weed you can trust. Plus, Mood backs everything with a 100-day satisfaction guarantee. So head on over to Mood.com, check out their amazing selection, and don't forget to use the promo code Ravens at checkout to save 20% off your first order.
Sometimes it can feel like everyone else has it together in their love lives. Whether married, dating, or single, the truth is most of us are still figuring out and finding our way. February is a tough month, whether you're single or married. You may feel pressure with all the talk of flowers, candy, stuffed animals, relationships, and dating. Therapy can help you identify what's dragging on your relationships and find ways to brighten them again. Whether it's for individuals or couples, it's an opportunity to identify what's getting in the way and help remove obstacles to happiness. That's where BetterHelp comes in. BetterHelp has quality therapists who work according to a strict code of conduct and are fully licensed in the United States. BetterHelp does the initial therapist matching work for you so you can focus on your therapy goals. A short questionnaire helps identify your needs and preferences, and their 12-plus years of experience and industry-leading match fulfillment rate means they typically get it right on the first try. If you aren't happy with your match, switch to a different therapist at any time. With over 30,000 therapists, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, having served over 6 million people globally, and it works. With an average rating of 4.9 out of 5 stars for a live session based on over 1.7 million client reviews. Sign up and get 10% off at BetterHelp.com. That's BetterHelp.com. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Right, to do this. Take the time to try and just see if it makes sense in your headspace. I'm not blaming you, Vas. I'm just saying that's analytics 101 in terms of trying to.
It's probably 54 and they entered a 6 instead of a 5. That's probably what it would have been. Yep.
Okay. All right. So somebody might have typed it in wrong on the website.
That's what I would assume. Yeah, they just got it 10% higher. You're right. I wasn't thinking that through. 64 would have been crazy. Even Greg Roman wasn't 64.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, some interesting stuff. Did we want to go over to the offensive side of the ball and discuss something? I thought we were on our way to that, or maybe.
No, I was just saying, if they're going to be a little bit more spread and a little bit less run heavy, then that might change, some of the calculations on the free agents and what they're worth to this team under this specific scheme.
I really I think one of the Ravens' DNA elements is they understand the relative cost of wide receiver and tight end based offenses. They know tight end based offense is cheap. This is a very deep year for tight ends, and particularly it's been said it's a very deep day 3 tight end group, that's exciting.
Absolutely.
And you need to draft 2, and you don't want to waste a day 1 pick. This is the Ravens' time, and they've got picks in the 5th round that should be good enough to hopefully to get it done. And there you go. So Ravens certainly had good success with that. But they're looking right down the barrel of Zay Flowers' $28 million 5th-year option.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to have to do it. I think. I don't think they can say no to the option. But then they're going to have to figure out if they actually want to pay it or trade him before the season begins. And that's
a big number.
Yeah.
Let me see here just a moment. Let me see what they valued his play at over the cap, because they have not that they're always spot on, but I think if you go to the player contract details page, they estimate what the player play in the last season was worth, and it doesn't want to load for me. So here we go. My phone updated last night, and I'm still working out the kinks. I apologize.
Yeah, I know. I understand how that goes. Well, while you're looking it up, and
they valued his play last year at 21.5. So obviously 28 is significantly more.
It's an interesting number. I mean, I wonder if there's a lower volume that plays into that, because any wide receiver for the Ravens is going to have a lower volume, and that's why receivers get unhappy here, is that they feel stuck in terms of their total number of targets. They can never put up, what they consider to be real superstar numbers. And they go see somebody else getting 120 catches elsewhere in the league, and they're having trouble getting 120 targets. And so it's it becomes a difficult situation.
Yeah, I mean, they have enough to feature one receiver. We saw with Hollywood, we saw with Flowers. They can feature one, but to feed 3 or 4 mouths, unless they make some schematic changes, which is a little bit unknown. Yeah, I agree. It's hard to do that.
Right. A little bit of depth at that wide receiver room would be nice, getting one more wide receiver. And along those lines, obviously they're considering whether or not DeAndre Hopkins will be back for this year. And Hopkins has, come out publicly and said he could do a lot more in this offense, yada, yada, and would love to come back and play with Lamar Jackson again. That's great.
Yep.
I'm happy with it. And I think there were some things that were really nice about him. But now A.J. Brown is unhappy in Philadelphia. By the way, folks, if you haven't noticed, Philadelphia's debt is coming due, and it's going to get freaking ugly. And I could not be more happy to be eating popcorn and watching this, by the way. But they have $0.2 million of restructurable cap currently, which is very, very much where the Browns were last year, that they basically didn't have anybody at all they could restructure. They had restructured every single contract to push those dollars forward. For the Eagles to be in this position it's a absolute nightmare for a football team to not have any cap flexibility at all to move around like that.
Their entire roster is pre-restructured, pretty much the entire roster. And I agree, it is coming due. We talked about the Ravens being a little bit more aggressive, maybe in some void years and that sort of thing. And like I think you mentioned, you want to be around the middle of the pack, but Philly is such an outlier the way they've done their contracts, and they have some free agents coming up, and they're having problems with the coaching staff. And it seems like Sirianni might be entering a lame duck year, and they might be in store for maybe a 2 or 3 year rebuild if things really go bad.
Right. I'm okay. See, I wouldn't eat a rebuild like that, even in exchange for a Super Bowl. Eat a 2 or 3 year rebuild. I'd much rather take your chances with the normal lottery ticket being in the postseason than eat a 2 or 3 year rebuild because you mortgaged $500 million of future cap.
I agree, Ken. Yeah. And I've probably been a little bit more hoping for a little bit more aggression than you have over the years. But no, my thought process has always been, if you can do it with a 1 year rebuild, I can accept a 1 year. More than that, I wouldn't do it. I agree with you.
All right. Very good. I'm glad we're on the same page on something like that. That's good to hear. So A.J. Brown coming to Baltimore. Let's talk a little bit about that, because I know he's a veteran receiver who's a big name, and everyone, of course, is excited about that possibility.
Yeah. So Derrick Henry is really stirring the pot with this. He's been on multiple places, and obviously they played together with the Titans, as we recall. I love AJ Brown as a player. He had a good year, although it was an inconsistent year. He's upset that he didn't get enough targets, apparently. I love the way he plays, and he's the kind of guy that's the skill set I want to add to the receiving room, is a contested catch winner to help Lamar on those improvisational plays, especially if you're losing Isaiah Likely, who was a guy that he looked for. Here's the problem. 70 Philadelphia has $72 million in dead money on AJ Brown's contract. And if they traded him, $49 million would accelerate against their cap.
I mean, they don't even have it. They can't make a move like that. So
they can't. It's just impossible. They're gonna, and who knows? I mean, there's pretty hard feelings. I think Derrick Henry and AJ Brown had an appearance together where they were talking about it, and Brown's apparently unhappy, but Philadelphia literally can't do anything. What can they do?
Yeah, that's a situation you get yourself into. I remember that happened a few years ago, and I think it was the Eagles as well. This was probably 15 years ago. It might even be a little more than that. I think it was working downtown. So I've got to just remember what year this would have been. So maybe between 2010 and 2015. So my recollection is that there was a third-year Eagles corner who said, I'm not making enough money. This isn't reasonable. I want you to extend me. And then he actually asked for a trade. And the Eagles came out with a letter that basically said, hey, look, we can't trade so-and-so right now because he's reduced his own trade value with his ridiculous comments. And he can't be extended until after his third season. And that may or may not have actually been possible at that time. It may have been possible under that CBA to extend him at that point. I've tried to remember who that guy was, but it was a third-year corner that entering his third year, who was already unhappy about things.
Darby? Was it Darby? Potentially could have been Darby, maybe.
Ronald Darby at that point with the Eagles.
I'm trying to think, because obviously they had Asamoah. How about Asante Samuel Jr. or Asante Samuel Sr., I should say. I'm trying to think. Lito Shepherd. I'm scanning my memory for Eagles corners.
I'm going to try and look it up maybe between elements of the show here. But anyway, no reasonable chance that AJ Brown comes. So please, folks, I know you want this and you want to say make it happen. I mean, the Ravens don't want to make it happen because they don't want to trade draft capital to get AJ Brown, and the Eagles can't make it happen because they can't release a contract like that and accelerate the money that they don't have currently. Yeah. So just relax.
It's just too much. It's just too much dead money. I'd be interested in trading if from a Ravens perspective, a third-round pick or a fourth-round pick or a combination. I'd be all completely on board because I think he still does have ability to play at a high level, but it just from Philadelphia perspective, financially, it's impossible.
Yeah, now AJ Brown is one of the receivers that I would be excited about. Actually, he's at 9.8 career yards per target. I mean, that's just fantastic. 9.7 in Philadelphia the last 4 years. He's still 29 in 2026. So it's not like he's gone further. He's gone as far as some of the Ravens receivers they've acquired late in over the last 15 years or so. But yeah, he's it would, if it were a stiff cost in terms of draft picks, I'm no way in hell on a player like that where he's making a lot of money and you have to trade pick for him.
Yeah, like it's a double whammy. We've been over that several times. Yeah. I mean, there are a couple of guys. Mike Evans is a free agent. Cortland Sutton may be available, and then the Bears, DJ Moore may become available. But to me, I just want the big body guy, and that's not just even receiver. That thought prevails across the depth chart, offensive line, defensive line. I want the Ravens to get a little bit bigger and more imposing this offseason.
All right, let's get to some mailbag questions here. We've got 3 of them here. I want to go through. The first is from Eric Clark. He says he's got a crazy hypothetical for us. We take one of Tyson Tate Lemon at 14 because of BPA. So not necessarily any one of those would I be okay with at 14, but okay. With Cleveland on the clock at pick 24, if McDonald, the defensive tackle from OSU, or Lomu, the offensive tackle from Utah, would you trade Zay 1 for it? I think he just says 1 for 1 if Todd came calling.
I like Tyson and Tate, certainly. Lemon is a smaller guy, more of a slot, more of an Amon-Ra St. Brown type, so he doesn't excite me as much. But the way the draft is shaking out, it does seem like that corners and receivers might be, especially with some, Peter Woods is not held in high esteem from either Jeremiah or Brugler, who, for my money, are the top two evaluators. Long story short, I think I probably would make that trade if you are able to get another guy that you think that can replace Zay's production. I wouldn't necessarily be excited about McDonald or Lomu as the pick at 24, but there might be another guy. I think the edge rusher out of Clemson has some appeal in that range.
Okay. Anyway, in terms of pure value of the 24th pick, they did not do as well for Hollywood Brown, but I'd expect them to do better for Zay. And he's at a similar point in the team's history. I think the 5th-year option date comes after the draft. Is that correct? Or is it before? I always forget. It might be in April.
I think it's like a week, one way or another, a week before, a week after.
Okay. All right. So
I think it might be a week after, so you could see if you drafted the replacement.
That makes sense. So you don't know if it's always going to make sense in terms of NFL, because the players would want it one way and the owners would want it the other. All right. But anyway, if I could see it happening, I guess I'm not. They better make sure Lamar Jackson is committed to the Ravens for long term before they trade Zay Flowers. I think that's a good connection. I don't think they want to lose it.
Agreed. All right. Next question is from Garnet West. How much actual value should we put into valuing contract control? Do you gentlemen
very loaded question, Garnett?
Yeah. Do you think that they shouldn't stop you from getting better at a position just because you have 2 years left on a deal for a player, even though that player and his
Voorhees, as if we couldn't know who it was,
has not shown justification to be the absolute starter consistently?
All right, I'll go ahead, because he's aiming that question directly at me, because I'm the one who usually does it. And Garnett, it's fine. You just ask the question. You don't even have to ask it as a question in this case. You can make it as a comment, because that's what this is, which is cool. But I have seen too many times that the player has a significant improvement in years 3 and 4 as an offensive lineman for the Ravens. There's a whole group of people out there who don't want to blame anything bad that happened to Linderbaum because of George Warhop being the offensive line coach. I think you've got to look at that reasonably in the other direction as well, to say, is it reasonable to believe that Voorhees could improve under Ledford where he couldn't under Warhop? And I'm not sure that it's even fair in either case that Warhop is. I'll just say the general trend has been a significant improvement in year 3 and 4. And look at players like Ryan Jensen and Bradley Bozeman and others who became serviceable in their 3rd and 4th year with the Ravens. Didn't always play well with other teams, by the way, but they became serviceable with the Ravens. I want that back. I want normal progression of offensive linemen. And I think it's a lot of value, by the way, to just. And I'm not saying you don't go after and get another guard, by the way, Garnett. I think that's okay. But what I would not say is you throw away the 2 years of team control for Voorhees for a song because you don't like what he's done so far. I think you keep riding that horse.
A couple of different tentacles to this question. First of all positions are not created equal. An offensive line position is basically you have one starter play every rep. If you're talking about, we like Tez Walker, so we're not going to draft the receiver. That doesn't make as much logical sense to me, because you've rotated a lot of positions. So rotational positions, I'm all for being able to do that. And also certain positions that just don't want to draft even a falling talent. I still don't want to draft the Trenton Simpson or J.K. Dobbins. Sometimes they're supposed to be the value pick, but the position isn't that valuable. It's really not that valuable. But as far as Voorhees, I'll just say this. I think we're on the same page, actually, Ken. I think he should be in a competition with Emory Jones, and that is one of your interior spots. I know some people think you need 3 new starters or 2 starters plus keeping Linderbaum. I think you got to take some chances somewhere, and I think those two competing. Voorhees has experience, Jones has upside. You hope you're going to get a good starter between the two of them.
Yeah, I mean, I first of all, I agree with that. I don't have any problem with Voorhees being in competition for a starting spot. But I think if you discard his value as a backup at this point, his potential value for 2 years as a backup, that'd be a big mistake. Big mistake.
The flip side of that coin, I'm sorry. The flip side of that coin is you don't want to be too in love with Sanusi Kane's team control, so you don't bring in a safety
Well, there you go.
when you really should have.
Well, there they knew enough to know that they were not going to be satisfied with his half-field play. And in fact, the reason they showed you that they knew that is that they kept Ruben Lowry.
But based off of mini camp, they seem to like Kane, and that may have impacted the decision.
That's complete crap. That's what's being reported by a bunch of people who are just there watching the thing and basically saying that Sanusi Kane is the number one backup at that position, and that's all that those the media in general is able to say. And I'm there as well, and I'll tell you, you just can't know that much about what's happening to Sanusi Kane on the back end in terms of what might in a real game situation. So anyway,
I guess all I'm saying is that was the time to make the addition, was minicamp time, not training.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah. And they had opportunities throughout training camp to add as well. I don't think it was over at that point. There were guys on the street. So, but Garnett, appreciate the question as always, my friend. And that is it's a good comment that you have there about Voorhees. And then Garnett also sent us a big table to look through that is more complex, but maybe we could talk about it. Did you see this, by the way?
I missed this one. Let me see if I can. Is it under film study?
Yeah, let me see if I can share the screen with you, and then we can go over this, because it's an interesting chart, and it's one where he's basically giving us the top free agent at several positions and saying who he thinks should be kept. So let's see if I can share this on screen, and then you and I can talk about it, even though other people are going to be listening on. Let's see if we got that. Share that. Okay. And there it is. We'll add to the stage. Okay. So I hope you can see that, Vas, if it's big enough on your screen.
Yes, I can. I sure can. Thank you. So just so everyone that's listening, he has contract extensions for Lamar, Linderbaum, Draymond Jones, Jordan Stout, Charlie Kolar, and Tyler Huntley. And then if you want to take it from there.
Yeah, so let's talk about the contract extensions first. I think that's a not unreasonable set of selections. They're going to probably have to. Lamar Jackson is going to be the big one. If they can get him, then it's okay to pay a few extra bucks on Linderbaum for the solidity and continuity of the line. Draymond Jones, I think it's a right player, right price number. Jordan Stout, I think they want to get back, and I don't think there'll be a lot of trouble doing that. His reputation as a holder and working with Randy Brown on that, I think that'll go well. Charlie Kolar, I'm not confident the Ravens can or will get him back. And then we have another episode, by the way, next week coming up on UFAs who are, what the percentage chance is to re-sign those guys. So take a listen to that in the future. And Tyler Huntley is a guy I'd like to have back, but I'm not sure it'll happen. But I think the more interesting thing here is the potential free agent targets. Yes. So at left guard, he's got Joel Bitonio as a potential veteran acquisition. Now, Bitonio has been in decline for a while.
Mm-hmm. I did see on PFF's ranking, they had him as one of the top 4 or 5 guards. Unfortunately, as much as we want the Ravens to land a great guard, and at least I do, is one of my priorities, there's not a whole lot out there. There's really not. So Bitonio graded much better than Teller over the last year from what I saw. But they're both, I think Teller's 31 and Bitonio's 33, or they're both getting up there.
That's about the right age. I know they complain about him getting Wyatt Teller fell off a cliff in terms of his production. So Elijah Vera Tucker is out there. Brady Christensen, who is a short arm tackle who ended up, I think Brady Christensen was a guy who moved to center at one point, but if they're considering a guard again, there'd be a question. And then on the edge, he likes Khalil Mack. Well, I like Khalil Mack too. If Khalil Mack had 80% of the production and therefore was at 20% of the price. But
so I saw his projection of $14 million on a 1-year deal. But I got that from PFF, and whoever they changed. Spielberger's not doing their projections anymore. And some of them looked way off to me. So I double checked with some of my numbers with SpoTrack to see, and we'll get to that in the second episode as far as Ravens. I'd certainly be in favor of Khalil Mack, or the other player he has here is Jalen Phillips, who I've made mention of several times. He was projected to make about $18 million by both PFF and SpoTrack. I'd be in on him at $18 million. I would.
Okay. Oh, that if it's we're talking a 3 or 4 year deal at that price.
Yep.
Okay, and I think I'd be okay with that. It'd be a big move. That'd be the pushing in about half your chips on that move alone. And then Boye Mafe, he has listed out there. Not a terrible guy to take a gamble on, certainly.
Mm-hmm.
And he might be a little less expensive anyway. Moving on to nose tackle, DJ Reader would be an exciting pickup.
DJ Reader, yes. I'd be more excited about somebody you brought to my attention during the season, Tim Settle, who's a free agent. Yep. He's a younger guy, and he has more pass rush potential.
I thought the Texans signed him. Didn't they extend him already?
I saw him on a free agent list that I was looking at earlier today. So I could be wrong.
Let's check that out if you can on OTC while we're talking through this list, because I believe he was signed, and that was he was signed immediately after I had proposed him as a trade candidate. That's why I remember it.
Okay,
but it would have been a great trade candidate, and maybe I'm wrong. Greg Newsome or Tariq Woolen. Now Reek Woolen has had some issues recently, but it's certainly very interesting speed candidate. If you've got any set of coaches who might be able to fix what's wrong with him technically, I think it would be the Ravens guys.
Yes, he would be one among my most intriguing cornerbacks. I'm not sure how much you want to spend on cornerback with this new coaching staff and potentially their ability to elevate players. Another guy that's interesting is Cam Taylor-Britt from Cincy, who is also a free agent. And it looks like Tim Settle is – I see he played at $4 million in 2025, and I don't see anything here for 26.
Okay. Well, I might –
eight accrued seasons, age 29. He's 29 years old, 6'3", 335.
But would be very excited about him as a pickup. Would be extremely excited. So if he's available, put me down. Yep. Kobe Bryant, obviously coming off a Super Bowl win. I think Kobe Bryant is going to be quite expensive, but we'll see.
Yep. They like to overpay for that Super Bowl pedigree. I don't know how much you want to spend at safety. You have a first-round safety. You have the highest paid safety in the game. You might even move Marlon Humphrey to safety. I think you want to get a cheaper guy, maybe retain a guy, maybe draft a guy. But I wouldn't add even more resources to safety. Another interesting name we glossed over here, left guard David Edwards from Buffalo. Now, I believe Buffalo, both their center and their left guard, are free agents. And Edwards, I think, is in the range of $13 million a year on a 3-year contract was the projection I saw for him.
Seems a little bit high.
Yeah.
McGovern maybe is the player I like a little better for the position as a potential replacement for Linderbaum. It will be, obviously much cheaper. Kobe Bryant, by the way, last year missed 17 tackles and had 14 stops on the year. That is not an exciting relative number. That is Patrick Queen territory in terms of missed tackles. All right. Garnett, appreciate you sending us this chart along with the draft picks. And give Garnett a follow out there. At Garnett478, I think is his handle. At least that used to be it. I know he's been through it a couple of times. Yeah, at Garnett478 is still his handle.
And we got one more quick question that came in since we began here from Gua. Again, hey guys, thanks for your football work. Do you think with all the changes, the Ravens will get captains? I think he asked us this last week and we didn't quite answer it directly. I don't mean game day captains, real captains with patches. I know it's not that serious, but I would love it, he says.
I thought they had 6 of those that they handed out last year. Maybe I'm wrong.
I honestly don't remember. It's not a huge deal either way, but I do think there's something to that. Well, part of it is now that they have the single-digit numbers; those are almost like the team captains.
Yeah, that's a good point.
They're very coveted, but yeah, new coach, you want to embody leadership or promote leadership. Why not give patches? I like that.
But you look at Anthony Levine, and it was a big part of his identity that everybody called him co-cap. He loved that. I think there've been plenty of other players who liked being defensive. Special teams captains are the ones who really love it, because the defenders, you're out there every play anyway. You probably have the green dot if you're the captain. If you're an offense, maybe you're an lineman. Maybe it'd be Tyler Linderbaum would be the center, but could be the captain, or maybe it has to be Jackson. I'm not sure. Or maybe they both have to have it. But anyway, you look at it, it's not a question of my role is big or not. With Andy Levine, it's a big asterisk on his play. Yeah,
absolutely.
All right. Outstanding stuff. Always great talking football with you, Vas. Tell folks where they can hit you up with a question online.
Sure. I am on Twitter X at Vasilis Lurikos, VASILISLERIKOS.
All right. Other folks out there, thanks for using hashtag Film Study Mailbag. Keep doing it. Most of the questions are coming in for Friday Morning GM, and I appreciate that. It's the off season. We wouldn't expect anything different. But if you have something where things are not explained well, I'd love to attack those in a 1 to 3 minute video or a whole pod if necessary. So I put out a pod late last off season on the offensive line scoring methodology. If you want something else like that, whether it's related to my work or general football theory or whatever, I'm happy to put something out like that, and I'll get somebody appropriate to talk about it with. Vas, thanks again, and we'll talk to you next time on Friday Morning GM.